Hello, we're live. This is a deep subject about Adventists. Should we vote or not to stop abortion, which is the greatest sin of our time? And I plan to have this as a very long live stream today. So I want to start off with a prayer. Father in heaven, this is a very contentious subject. I don't know why, Lord, it is. Sacrificing children to Moloch should be simple. But Lord, we've been taught many things. We've been taught many errors by our elders, our forefathers, people in society, Lord. And so it's for many of us, it's difficult to understand what is the right way. Please lead us into all truth. I pray in Jesus' name. Okay, so if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer. I believe that the entire Bible and that the Ellen White writings that she wrote are inspired of God. So if you have anything from those two sources to show me, I will definitely take it seriously. Okay, I grew up in a family where my mother said voting is a sin. It's a Seventh-day Adventist family. And I believed her as a youngster. And as a rebellious 18-year-old, I did vote. But I'm not saying that was a good thing on my part, the reason that I voted at that time. But in later life, I started to really question this. Is voting really a sin? And there are Ellen White quotes that make it appear that way if you just take that one quote out of context. When I say one quote, there's actually more than just one quote. There's 3 or 4 quotes. And one of the quotes is that we should bury political questions. Okay, well, that means to get rid of them, bury them. Political questions, that's the question. What is a political question? It's not just a question, it's a political question. Okay? And she writes very clearly that we are to avoid political strife. Political strife. Well, is everything involved in voting is political strife? No. And she makes a comment once or twice. She makes a comment to the feeling that if we do vote, we are partakers of the sins of those voted into office. I've always had a problem with that because if I have no way of knowing if that person is going to do something bad, how in the world am I responsible for what they do that I had no way of knowing they would do? To me, that's a little bit similar to if the people in Israel's day had chosen David, and God did choose David. God was the one who chose David. And yet David did some terrible sins. So is God responsible? Is God responsible for David's having Uriah the Hittite murdered and committing adultery before that and then murdering him? Is God responsible? Is that God's sin? You need to think of these things a little more clearly. Another thing that made me question the standard interpretation is that the Seventh-day Adventist Church, all of our church doctrines and our church dealings and the people we have as leaders in our church, they're not there because of their fathers being in that position. In other words, it's not a kingly line of succession. We vote for those leaders. That's the way the Seventh-day Adventist Church works. So when we vote for the leaders in our church, when I say church, I mean the Seventh-day Adventist General Conference, but also in our churches, we vote in individual churches. So we have a nominating committee. We do voting for this position and that position. Are we partaking in the sins of those who we vote for? Because if we are, then we're all in a heap of trouble. And I think these two examples show very clearly that that's not possible, that is the meaning of what Ellen White is saying by we are responsible for their sins. So what is she saying? I believe that she's saying we're responsible for the sins. If they say they're going to do some sin, and we say, yeah, let's vote for that, then yeah, then we're responsible for that. If some candidate for president or some high up public office in the land says, I support more children sacrificed to Moloch, or I support men who want to dress up like women and go into women's bathrooms, I think that's a wonderful thing. Then if we vote for that person, of course we're partly responsible for their actions. I mean, that's just common sense. But let's say they make no hint about that at all in their candidacy before they're elected. And then after they're elected, then they change their minds or they make a mistake or something. Then how can we be responsible for that? And the person I vote for in my church to be head deacon, he goes out and does something terrible without me having any prior knowledge or intimation that that's what he was going to do. Like he says, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to rob that bank tomorrow, but today I want you to vote for me for head deacon position, okay? If I say, yeah, sure, man, I'll vote for you. Well, of course I'm partly responsible for that. But in 99.999% of those situations, that's not going to happen. You don't know what that guy's going to do tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. But yeah, if I have it in my heart that, yeah, I want to do this bad thing, and somebody votes for me after I tell them that I want to do this bad thing, then of course they're partly responsible. And that's the biblical story throughout the Old Testament. The Israelites, they had some bad kings, and most of the time they supported the bad kings. They liked that. They wanted to sacrifice on the mountaintops. They wanted to send their children through the fire to Moloch. They were cool with that. Not all the time, but I'm just saying many of the times. And so when the country was punished by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, whoever's, it was the entire nation or parts of the nation. It wasn't just, in other words, it wasn't just the leaders that were destroyed for their sins. It was the entire nation. And that shows that we are responsible for the leaders we have. If the leaders are very bad, especially in today's society, when nearly every nation in the world, thanks to God raising up America and spreading this around the world, nearly every country in the world has some type of election. And yes, even the what I call the bad countries in the world, the communist countries that only have one party, they still have elections. And so you can choose, and I understand in some countries you may go to jail if you don't vote, but you can choose to support the evil leaders, or you can choose not to support the evil leaders in most countries of the world. So, no, Ayesha, that's not correct. Trump's supporters are not showing hate. The mass media is showing hate. Please don't get brainwashed by the mass media. The mass media shows lots of things that aren't true. Let's see what let's see what Ellen White has written on this subject of voting. This is the subject of this live stream here today. Aisha, Puerto Rico was not called garbage. Again, if you're going to believe the MSM, that's just going to be it's just going to be fake news against what is actually happening. Nobody is saying Puerto Rico is garbage. Now, Puerto Rico does many bad things, and that's one reason they're not part of America, but yeah, right. You watch it on a channel that took a bit here and a bit here and a bit here, and you're making up this fake story, and it's not flying, Aisha. Okay, let's talk about Ellen White. That has nothing to do anyway with the abortion issue. Okay, you're trying to sidetrack the issue, trying to make it look like killing babies is not that important. That saying something about Puerto Rico, perhaps saying something about Puerto Rico, is on the same level as killing Jesus in the womb, and that's just reprehensible. Just stop it. Okay, so here we are with what did Ellen White have to say about the issue of voting, and let's apply that to the abortion issue. Okay, this is on the Ellen G. White website, the White Estate website. The right to vote, shall I exercise it? This is by Paul A. Gordon. And this is reprinted from Adventist Review, September 18 and 25, 1980. Paul A. Gordon served as Undersecretary of the Ellen G. White Estate. And I've done some more checking on who Paul A. Gordon was. He worked for the Ellen G. White Estate for 30 years. And from 1990 to 1995, he was the director of the Ellen G. White Estate. Yes, Aisha, I did invalidate what you said. That's correct. Okay, let's see what Paul A. Gordon had to write here. The decision to vote for candidates is a personal decision. If you vote, keep your voting to yourself. Do not feel it your duty to urge everyone to do as you do. Now, he puts that at the top here, and that's really not a very good thing to do, because this, taken out of context, just for what it says here, is it will lead to a wrong conclusion, because it makes it sound like that if you do decide to vote, don't tell anybody about it. Don't tell other people to vote like you did. Well, we can read in Ellen White's writings where she told people how to vote and to urge it upon others. She did. She absolutely did. So don't take this one out of context quote here and think that, oh, that's, if I vote, then I shouldn't tell anybody. That's not at all what Ellen White said. Should Seventh-day Adventists become involved with political questions? Is it our duty to campaign for a party or person? Should we take a position on the social issues of the day? Should we vote at all? These are all very important, very good questions. Christians are called to be the salt of the earth. If we are going to be the salt of the earth, then we must vote. David, hello. Yes, I'll get to that quote. And Ellen White says that we should vote, or we please Satan. And let's not please Satan. In order to find some answers to these and related questions, let us take a historical look at our position on politics and voting. It was 19 years after the 1844 disappointment before the Seventh-day Adventist Church was formally organized. These were years of strong resistance to organization on the part of many Adventists because of the opposition to the Advent message by the established churches prior to 1844. So this was a big problem in the early Adventist church, is that they did not like any type of organization. For the first few years of these nearly 2 decades, our founders were regrouping and settling on a new course. Those Adventists who were the beginning of the Seventh-day Adventist Church usually were independent people. They had to be. In the face of ridicule at their disappointed hopes of the return of Christ, they were men and women with the courage of their convictions, for better or worse. It was a time of isolation from the rest of the world, and barriers were erected on both sides. And that basically means that there were people for organization in the church, and they were strongly opposed by those who said, oh, any type of organization it's Babylon, it's popery. We shouldn't do anything of that. And so there was a quite strong type of barrier. And of course, this is also about the barrier between us Adventists and the world. Related to their isolation from other churches was the isolation of Adventists from involvement with civil government. Just as other churches were considered Babylon, just as I was saying earlier, so the civil government was regarded with suspicion and distrust, and often with good reason. It was a period of political corruption, perhaps unmatched by any preceding period in United States history. Adventists expressed strong opposition to politics and the spirit that usually accompanies an election campaign. These convictions are reflected in early articles and editorials that appeared in the Review and Herald. Okay, so it was, I mean, there were literally gunfights regarding political strife, political issues in the day. It was crazier than it is today, and we think that it's very crazy today. And here's one writer, David Hewitt, a thoughtful and solid lay member in the Battle Creek congregation, asked a question in 1856, 7 years before our church was officially organized. My brethren, shall we spend our time in political campaigns, when we so soon expect Christ in all the glory of his Father and all the holy angels with him, when he shall sit upon the throne of his glory? This is Review and Herald, September 11, 1856. So you see that a lay member in the Battle Creek Church is basically saying, let's just leave all this political stuff. We expect Christ to come back very soon. This world is not our home. Just leave it be. Uriah Smith, editor of the Review at the time, as if in answer to the question, declared in the same issue that the Adventist position was one of neutrality in politics. With our people refusing to take part in a contest so exciting as the one which is now agitating this nation, he concluded his editorial by stating, this is Uriah Smith, to the question why we do not with our votes and influence labor against the evil tendency of the times, we reply that our views of prophecy lead us to the conclusion that things will not be bettered. And we feel it is our duty to confine our efforts to preparing ourselves and others as far as in us lies for the great and final issue already pressing upon us, the revelation of the Son of Man from heaven, the destruction of all earthly governments, the establishment of the glorious, universal, and eternal kingdom of the King of Kings, and the redemption and deliverance of all his subjects. Now this is Uriah Smith's idea, and he's saying that no, we Adventists, we shouldn't vote, we shouldn't get into politics, we shouldn't do any of that, because Jesus is coming very soon, so just leave it be. Excuse me. The arguments continued to be heard for refusing to vote. In the same year, Roswell F. Cottrell, who was a minister, and he wrote the what's basically the foreword of the original Great Controversy book. He said that the United States was upon the eve of a political contest that he believed would finally result in the formation of the image prophesied in Revelation 13:11. This is Roswell F. Cottrell. Under these circumstances, if I cast my vote at all, he said, it will ... tell for or against the making of the image. If I vote in favor of the formation of the image, I shall aid in creating an abomination which will persecute the saints of God. ... On the other hand, if I vote against this work, I shall vote against the fulfillment of the prophecy. ... Therefore, I cannot vote at all. October 30, 1856. Now, do you see his logic problem here? His logic problem is that he thinks that his vote will work against the fulfillment of God's prophecy. He was mistaken. In the light of the tragically low state of American politics, his concluding remarks are interesting. I cannot vote for a bad man, and this is, I hear many people talking about this in this 2024 election. I cannot vote for a bad man, for that is against my principles, and under the present corrupt and corrupting state of politics, I could not wish to elevate a good man to office, for it would ruin him. Well, that part we don't hear in this election, but we hear the part, we cannot vote for a bad person, and both people in this election are bad, so I just won't vote at all. It's illogical. The next year, further objections to voting were voiced. If I enter the list as a voter, I do in fact endorse this government as worthy of fellowship. If my name is entered upon the poll book, I then become a part of the body politic and must suffer with the body politic in all its penalties. Again, this is not Ellen White. This is Roswell F. Cottrell. And again, this is it's a logic mistake. And just because you are listed on the list as a voter, you don't endorse the government. Come on, we're a citizen of a country. Just because we're a citizen of a country, does that mean we endorse everything the country does? Of course not. I mean, this is a logical fallacy. David, you need to listen to the end here, because Ellen White says we are to vote. And I understand you have not been shown those quotes before, and today we are going to clear that up for you, okay? Okay. It was largely national issues that were at stake in the situations described in the foregoing articles. Now, we have to remember 1856, what was the big issue? It was slavery, of course. And it was coming to a head. I mean, in 1856, it's more like which states are going to become free states and which states will become slave states. That was kind of the big issue. In 1860, then it comes to a head then with Abraham Lincoln, and there were 4 candidates who were candidates for president at that time, and the country basically split. And of course, you know the history. I'm just trying to say the background for the times that they're writing of here. The national issues. At a local election in Battle Creek in 1859, it challenged Adventists to reconsider their responsibilities as citizens in a community. They were pressed to make a more definite commitment on the subject of voting. What were they to do? Okay. Now this quote here that's coming up is one of the strongest quotes to show Adventists we should vote. In fact, we must vote if there are spiritual issues, society, ways to increase the morality of society type issues. We must vote. And this is the main quote that helped me to see that my mother's position that we should not vote, that I grew up on, was in fact in error. Ellen White, who was present as Adventist leaders discussed this question, this was in Battle Creek where she was, she made this entry in her diary. Attended meeting in the evening. Had quite a free, interesting meeting. After it was time to close, the subject of voting was considered and dwelt upon. James first thought, this is her husband, James White. Then Brother Andrews. Brother Andrews is probably, yes, this is J. N. Andrews, I'm sure, talked. And it was thought by them best to give their influence in favor of right and against wrong. So we have James and Andrews speaking that it's good to give our influence in favor of right and against wrong. Now, this sounds perfect to me. I mean, we should give our influence in favor of right and against wrong. And I don't believe anybody has any question that that is the good thing to do. They think it right to vote in favor of temperance men being in office in our city. Okay, let's unpack that. This is Andrews and James White, J. and Andrews, James White. They think it right to vote. Okay, they're talking about voting in the government and society. It's not talking about church officers, which again I mentioned that in the start of this live stream. that we vote for church officers, and so the idea of voting being bad is mistaken. It's completely mistaken. So they think it right to vote, but this is in society as a civic duty, if you will. They think it right to vote in favor of temperance. Okay, what is temperance? Temperance is talking about prohibition, basically, and that's the word we usually put this under the umbrella today. But temperance back then, it meant the liquor store owner, the sellers, the makers, all that should be done away with. And like I say, it's almost exactly the same as what we call prohibition today. Temperance, of course, temperance in the normal usage today means don't eat too much, drink water, get lots of sunlight on this type of thing. But the idea of the word temperance in the time that it's written here, 1859, means no alcohol. They think it right to vote in favor of temperance. Okay, if it stopped there, it could mean what many Adventists today say, that if there is a ballot initiative, that's fine for us to vote for a ballot initiative, but we should not vote for humans, because humans may sin and then we are culpable, we are guilty of their sins while in office. Okay, that's a mistaken viewpoint, because the next word right here, they think it right to vote in favor of temperance, men. Now, of course, men, women, we understand that today, except that what is a man, what is a woman, some people today don't even know anymore. But temperance men, temperance people, being in office in our city. So this is speaking about city officers, in other words, government officers, people who are against the selling and spreading of alcohol. We should vote for them. Being in our city, instead of by their silence, there means Seventh-day Adventist, instead of by their silence, running the risk of having intemperance men put in office. This is common sense. If the good people, when I say good people, please understand me, I understand we're all sinners, but the people who are trying to uplift the morals of society, if we don't vote, if the people who support our viewpoints of uplifting the morals of society, if they don't get elected, then who will get elected? I think we saw quite clearly when the White House was lit up with the rainbow colors, we saw very clearly what happens when Christians don't go out and vote. Abominations become the law of the land. And it goes the other way too. When the law of the land changed and Roe versus Wade was overturned, the righteous rejoiced, or they should have, but there was still quite a few Adventists who saying, "Oh, this is a religious right to have an abortion." That just blows my mind. But anyway, here in 1859, they are saying it's right to vote in favor of temperance men being put in office. Brother Hewitt, now this is the same Hewitt that 3 years earlier said we shouldn't vote. He tells his experience of a few days since and has settled that it is right to cast his vote. So Brother Hewitt in 3 years changed his mind from not voting to voting. So that's a pretty powerful statement, that people can change their minds, and that we should be on the lookout for a new light wherever we see it. Brother Hart talks well. Brother Leon opposes. No others object to voting, but Brother Kellogg begins to feel that it is right. I believe this is John Harvey Kellogg's father. Pleasant feelings exist among all the brethren, so they could have their little disagreements, even on a big issue like this, and they could still be brothers in the faith. Oh, that they may all act in the fear of God. Okay, and then here is the big quote. Men of intemperance have been in the office today in a flattering manner, expressing their approbation of the course of the Sabbath keepers not voting, and express hopes that they will stick to their course, and like the Quakers, not cast their vote. Satan and his evil angels are busy at this time, and he has workers upon the earth. May Satan be disappointed is my prayer. And this shows that this is in Temperance, but it's actually, this is from the diary of Ellen White from 1859. Okay, so the people who were supporting liquor, they came into the office. What is this office here? This office is the Review and Herald office there in Battle Creek. That was the main place of work for the Seventh-day Adventist Church then. And of course, the Seventh-day Adventist Church wasn't even organized yet. But these people that came in today, I don't know why they would do this. To me, this is very strange. But they came into the office, talked to the people, thanked them in a flattering manner, say, thank you so much for not voting. We're so happy that you're like the Quakers. Don't cast your vote. And what does Ellen White say? She gets, this is very powerful. Satan and his evil angels are busy at this time, and he has workers upon the earth. Well, it's obvious that she's talking about these people who are going around trying to support selling alcohol. They're in league with Satan. May Satan be disappointed is my prayer. So she is not in so many words, but she is quite strongly supporting voting to disappoint Satan. So that's why I say in many of my comments, probably many of you have seen here on YouTube, that Ellen White says we should vote, and if we don't vote, we please Satan. That's I admit my paraphrase, but that looks to be like basically what she's saying here. And if Satan and his evil angels are busy at that time with alcohol, selling alcohol, can you guess how many more and evil they are today when they're supporting child sacrifice to Moloch? That's not all. They're supporting cutting off reproductive organs and changing genders and all kinds of weird, nasty abominations, and men doing things that are unseemly. And should we just stay back and hey, go, Satan, you have the field, do it your way? I don't want to be guilty of the sins of any person who might try to stop and put down this abomination. You're just pleasing Satan if you choose not to vote. Now, I admit, and please don't misunderstand me, that on matters of this world, like for example, should we support Israel or not, or should we make a wall at the southern border or not, or should we have free education for everybody or not? These are issues of the world that we're not talking about here. And if you want to vote for that, that's fine. Those are the types of things that if we vote for or against, just don't tell anybody about it. It's not important. But things that are to uplift the morals of society, yes, we are to tell others about it, and we are to urge them to vote. We are to be the salt of the earth. Here, Ellen White she's telling people, if you don't vote, you're pleasing Satan. Okay. Let's see, Alicia, I'm sorry, you don't know what's happening here. Trump has been saving over 3,000, I got 300 here, sorry, 3,000 lives a month ever since Roe versus Wade was overturned. So that's 3,000. That's 3,000 lives a month. It's such a large number, Aisha, that we can't fathom it. If it's one baby being killed, then we say, oh, that's terrible, and it makes news and everything. But if it's literally millions, they say maybe 55 million since 1973. And it's right around 1 million every year, just in America. In the world, it's around 46 million a year. 1 million a year in America, and it's like, well, it's okay. It's a woman's right. It's because it's such a huge number that we can't fathom it. But 3,000 a month that Trump is still saving today, even though he's not president anymore. His picks for Supreme Court justice have overturned Roe versus Wade, and praise God, we have many more babies in America that would have been here if Hillary had been elected. And that's just fact. And these are the least of these, my brother. Being off overseas. Wars we are Alicia, what are you talking about? Wars we are currently supporting. Wow, where are you getting your news from, Aisha? Are you Seventh-day Adventist, Aisha? Really? I mean, because your talking points are all mainstream media, like CNN News or NBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times. I mean, that's PBS. That's exactly what you're talking about. It's all fake news. I mean, that's really weird. Yeah, Israel is not part of God's church. I guess you don't know that, but you do now. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is God's remnant church. Okay, if you're Seventh-day Adventist, then you know that Israel has nothing to do with God's remnant church. Praise God that you're Seventh-day Adventist. Yes, I'm thanking the Lord for that. Okay, let's go back to our article here. Note that Ellen White was not just talking about voting on issues, she was talking about voting for men. So yes, we are to vote for men. She favored voting for temperance men. But there continued to be a cautious attitude toward voting in general. About a year after this experience in Battle Creek, James White, as review editor, wrote, "The political excitement of 1860 will probably run as high as it has for many years." Yes, 1860 was a crazy election. When I say crazy, there were four candidates who all got votes, who all got electoral votes. And Abraham Lincoln did not get the majority. He just got the majority of these four. But basically, the country was very split, very divided. Of course, we know what happened after that. But there will probably never be another election in America with as much excitement as 1860. We would warn our brother not to be drawn into it. Yes, don't be drawn into the excitement. That's wise words. We're not prepared to prove from the Bible that it would be wrong for a believer in the third angel's message to go in a manner becoming his profession and cast his vote. We do not recommend this, neither do we oppose. If a brother chooses to vote, we cannot condemn him, and we want the same liberty if we do not. This makes it pretty clear that James White is not going to vote in 1860. But he's saying we cannot show you from the Bible that it is wrong to vote, and you just leave us to ourselves if we don't want to vote either. I don't agree with that position because it's basically against what Ellen White had written the year before, but that's what he wrote in 1860. He then went on to express certain strong reservations, but we do believe that he who enters into the spirit of the coming contest loses the spirit of the present truth and endangers his own soul. I believe this is very proper, very wise words. It's the spirit of the contest. It's the political spirit that we are to stay away from. We are children of God. Don't get mixed up with the spirit of the world. It is evident that some Adventists did vote in this election, for 2 years later, James White wrote, "Those of our people who voted at all at the last presidential election to a man voted for Abraham Lincoln. We know of not one man among Seventh-day Adventists who has the least sympathy for secession." This is in 1862 in the Review and Herald. Well, actually, he's a little bit mistaken. This is probably what he knew in August 12, 1862. But I've read in Ellen White's writings where she strongly reproved a Seventh-day Adventist man in the North or maybe Maryland. But anyway, he was not deep South. I think he was in the North, who had voted for the Breckinridge, who wanted secession. He wanted the South to succeed. He was for slavery. And she wrote him a strong letter that she basically said, "You are not Seventh-day Adventists." So we see that voting for Abraham Lincoln is what the Seventh-day Adventists who did vote, that's what they did, because he was the man who was going to do the best to uplift the morals of society. He was going to try to, I don't think he said he would actually abolish slavery at that time, but he was the obvious choice for people who did not like slavery and thought that he would be the best to go against it. And he did speak against it. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president, 11 southern states seceded from the Union. America was plunged into civil war. A short time later, on May 21, 1863, the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists was formally organized. The country was then halfway through the war. So that was 1860 that Abraham Lincoln was elected. 1863 that the Seventh-day Adventist Church was officially organized. So it's right in the same time frame there. And how was the church organized? Okay, he's talking about 1865. This is the third annual session of the General Conference. An important item of business at the session was a choice of officers. James White was what? James White was elected president of the General Conference. Elected. So people voted for James White. We were just talking earlier about we shouldn't vote. There's a little bit, you can see the problems going on there in the early church. Okay, so we see the things going on at this 1865 General Conference. Some significant resolutions were adopted. One expressed sorrow for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So an official Seventh-day Adventist resolution expressed sorrow for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. That's good and proper. Another reaffirmed non-combatancy in war with an acknowledgement of responsibility to government and tribute, custom, honor, and reverence to the civil power as enjoined in the New Testament. Sounds perfectly fine too. A third involved the subject of voting. Well, they had just voted for James White. Isn't that interesting? Remembering that James and Ellen White were present and actively participated in the work of the conference, we note this resolution resolved that in our judgment, the act of voting, when exercised in behalf of justice, humanity, and right, is in itself blameless and maybe at sometimes highly proper, but that the casting of any vote that shall strengthen the cause of such crimes as intemperance, insurrection, and slavery, we regard as highly criminal in the sight of heaven. But we would deprecate any participation in the spirit of party strife. Okay, so don't get involved in party strife. But this is very strong, and this is basically what we still hold as a Seventh-day Adventist church, because this was voted on a General Conference session. That is the official Seventh-day Adventist position. Voting, when exercised on behalf of justice, humanity, and right, is in itself blameless, and maybe it's sometimes highly proper. But the casting of any vote that shall strengthen the cause of such crimes as intemperance. Now, come on, if intemperance, the drinking of alcohol, which is not completely forbidden in the Bible, it's forbidden for a few people, for the Nazarites and for the high priest. But other than that, drinking is not completely prohibited. Drinking alcohol is not completely prohibited in the Bible. But here they call it a crime. Insurrection, that's a crime. And slavery. Slavery, again, is not a crime in the Bible. So actually, they went a little bit overboard here in 1865. But the way slavery was carried out in America in the 1800s, 1800s, it definitely was a crime. The way they did slavery, and that's, of course, what they are referring to. They're not talking about all slavery. I don't think they're talking about slavery as it was carried out in America in the 1860s. When they did this, it was a crime. They were splitting up families. They were selling humans like cattle. That's not the biblical way at all. Highly criminal in the sight of heaven. Now, if these three things were highly criminal and voting for them was highly criminal, then what about sacrificing children to Moloch? And that's what Kamala Harris is wanting. She is for abortion. She's very strongly in favor of abortion. As senator, Kamala Harris voted for a bill that would allow parents to throw their newborn babies in the trash can if they so chose. There was a bill that if, like, an abortionist makes a mistake or something, the child comes out alive, the child's alive, breathing, or, well, on the table there. Should the child be given support for its life, or should it be allowed to die? And Kamala Harris voted allowed to die. That's evil. I mean, that's satanic evil. If you vote for that, your vote is highly criminal in the sight of heaven. Yes, Ayesha. Abortion is much worse than slavery in America ever was. If you choose to vote for someone who is in favor of abortion, then yes, your vote is highly criminal in the sight of heaven. Statement of principle. Here we go. In 1876, they're still writing in the review, because this is still being discussed today among members of the church, and mostly among members who don't know that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has an official position on this. This is someone writing in 1876. Shall we meddle with politics? No. If we must mingle in the noisy crowd and shout the praises of the poor, puny man who's to be raised to the pinnacle of power? No. If we must give currency to the many-voiced slanderous reports which fill the political atmosphere with clouds and mist, but we may deposit a ballot quietly in the box in behalf of freedom, and as quietly give a reason therefor. So he's saying, don't get involved in political strife, just quietly do your ballot, which is, in normal circumstances, a very wise advice. But again, we've seen that in the temperance issue, no. We are to be loud and clear that we should vote in favor of temperance. Discussing the coming political campaign of 1880, James White said, we as a people, as Adventists, have before us an all-absorbing subject and a work of the greatest importance from which our minds should not be diverted. So he's basically saying, hey, come on, people, let's don't get so involved in this election in 1880. In 1880, as far as I know, other than temperance, I don't know of any major subject that was morally involved. I think it was starting to get into the idea of the free silver issue that roiled American politics for almost 20 years in the late 1880s to 1900. But that might be what he's referring to here. I don't know. It should be our duty to adapt ourselves as far as possible without compromising truth to all who come within the reach of our influence, and at the same time stand free from the strife and corruptions of the parties that are striving for the mastery of it. Again, that's very good advice. Writing from Australia in 1898, Ellen White emphasized the same points. We are not, as a people, to become mixed up with political questions. Be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers in political strife, nor bind with them in their attachments. Keep your voting to yourself. Do not feel it your duty to urge everyone to do as you do. Well, this is what we saw at the beginning of this article. And again, just taken by itself, you get the wrong impression. That's why we need all of what Ellen White and the Bible says to get all the words that God has given us on this issue. And the idea that we're not to be mixed up with political questions and moral questions are different. Please understand that. A moral question can become a political question. Okay? The idea of not selling alcohol, getting alcohol out of the public, was a moral issue that became a political issue. And praise God it did. And it worked. It did very well. Prohibition, don't believe the hype that you read on mass media today or in history books today. Because prohibition was a great success, and it helped save many lives in America, and it's still saving lives today because Americans in general drink less alcohol than people of other countries. It's true. But anyway, the point was that the moral issues can become political issues, and that's not a bad thing. They should permeate through society, the salt of the earth idea. And the people who become political leaders, they take the good ideas, the moral ideas, they realize that hey, there's a lot of people who will vote for me and I can become in office, whether for good reasons or bad reasons. And they have to, at the minimum, give lip service to the people who voted for them. And thanks to the former president, he got in 3 Supreme Court justices who were against sacrificing children to Moloch, and they overturned Roe versus Wade. Praise God. And you won't be able to find it hardly on the internet even, but it's true that what the Supreme Court did there is saving around 3,000 lives a month. Now, yeah, I understand there's people trying to get around that with telehealth. They call it telehealth. They get abortion pills sent to them from other states, or they go travel to the other states to get their abortions done, kill their babies. But the facts remain that about 3,000 babies a month are being saved every month in America. That's incredible. And that's because of the former president. He doesn't believe that killing babies is a good thing to do. And I understand he's a little wobbly. He's trying to get in power. I don't agree with everything he does. But on this issue, there's a stark contrast between the candidate who wants to sacrifice more children and the candidate who's not wanting to sacrifice more children. I'm gonna finish this. This is pretty long here. Huh? No, let's go to part 2. We're almost done here with part 1. Maybe another 10 more minutes or so on this live stream. Just 1 month before the death of James White, so this is around 1881, Seventh-day Adventists were gathered for camp meeting in Des Moines, Iowa. A proposed action was placed before the delegates, which read, resolved. Okay, so this is the second biggest point in Ellen White's writings, that we should vote. And again, very few of us Seventh-day Adventists know about this quote. I sure wish that David Inchloff and Ayesha, I wish that you knew this quote. I wish you were still watching, because this is another strong piece of evidence that shows that Ellen White was strongly in favor of us Adventists voting. Resolved that we express our deep interest in the temperance movement now going forward in this state, and that we instruct all our ministers to use their influence among our churches and with the people at large to induce them to put forth every consistent effort by personal labor and at the ballot box in favor of the prohibitionary amendment of the Constitution, which the Friends of Temperance are seeking to secure. Wow. Now, that was a support by Ellen White. That comment has support by Ellen White. Ayesha, you're mistaken. Kamala Harris supports killing more babies. Donald Trump does not support killing more babies. That's just fact. Everybody understands that. Don't try to spin it some way. Some disagreed with the clause that called for action at the ballot box, because there's the ballot box right here. It says the ballot box. And urged that it be taken out. Ellen White, who was attending this camp meeting, had retired for the night, but she was called to give her counsel. Writing of it at the time, she said, I dressed and found I was to speak to the point of whether our people should vote for prohibition. I told them yes, and spoke 20 minutes. Okay, now this particular quote right here doesn't state one very important point. And it's this important point that I want to show you, and I may have to show you that tomorrow, because I don't think that I can bring it up very quickly. Here's how I get to the Ellen G. White estate, m.egwhitewritings.org, and let's see if I can find it. But she goes as far as to say that we should vote on the Sabbath, if necessary. And her grandson, Arthur Lacey White, He is the one who wrote this in the review. So this is not the actual words of Ellen White, but this is what is reported that Ellen White said. Yes. Anyway, there was I'm sorry. Shall we vote for prohibition? She asked. Oh, here we go. Here we go. This is it right here. Let me get this up on your screen so you can see what I'm seeing. I'm not an expert at this. I just started. I think it was last week. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. This is what Arthur White, Ellen White's grandson, wrote regarding this experience. And let me show you. This is on the Ellen White the website, m.egwritings.org. And let me get the font bigger for you so you can see here. 1881 camp meetings. Okay. And let's read this point, because this, like I said, this is the second big Ellen G. White quote that shows that yes, we should vote. I hope you can see here. The issue under discussion. Can you see what I'm seeing? Yeah. Okay, here we go. The issue under discussion was on the matter of voting for prohibition. Well, here we got the word prohibition in 18. Well, Arthur White wrote this later. 26 years later, G.B. Starr, laboring in Australia, was confronted with a similar question. He called to mind how Ellen White, at the Iowa meeting, related a dream in which she seemed to be in a large gathering where the temperance movement was being discussed. A fine-looking man with pen in his hand was circulating a temperance pledge. Okay, in Ellen White's dreams, this fine-looking man or a tall young man, it always refers to an angel from God. So he was circulating a temperance pledge. This is what they often did back then. They had a paper they actually passed around in church or in these meetings, get people to sign, I will not drink alcohol. I will not touch alcohol. But none would sign at this meeting, this Adventist meeting. None would sign. As the visitor was leaving, he turned and said, God designs to help the people in a great movement on this subject. He also designed that you, as a people, should be the head and not the tail in the movement. But now the position you have taken will place you at the tail. I need to do a whole live stream on this issue, because this is exactly what has happened in the pro-life movement. God designed Seventh-day Adventists to be at the head of the pro-life movement, and instead we are the tail because we support abortion as a church. Okay, so this is Ellen White's quotes, quoting Ellen White. Shall we vote for prohibition? She asked. Yes, to a man everywhere. Wow. She replied, perhaps I shall shock some of you if I say, if necessary, vote on the Sabbath day for prohibition if you cannot at any other time. Again, this is a relating by her grandson of what Ellen White said. This is not her actual words that she's writing down. But it looks like, I mean, it's in quote marks. It looks like these are her actual words that she said. Perhaps I shall shock some of you if I say, if necessary, vote on a Sabbath day for prohibition if you cannot at any other time. Well, what would she say about abortion? Like I said earlier, abortion is much worse than prohibition than drinking alcohol ever was. Drinking alcohol is permitted in the Bible in some situations. Yes, it is. Sacrificing your children to Molech is an abomination. It is never permitted. It is always the death penalty in the Bible. So even if the election was on the Sabbath, yes, we should go out and vote. That is what we should do, Seventh-day Adventists. Let me go back to our original thing and finish that up here. I got it right. Here we go. Let's finish this up. Okay, so at that Iowa camp meeting, she said, yes, we should vote, and we should even vote on the Sabbath if necessary. Some people disagreed that called for action at the ballot box, urged that it should be taken out. Ellen White said, yes, we should vote even at the ballot box. Ellen White never changed her position. And even just a year before her death in 1914, she re-emphasized the responsibility of every citizen to exercise every influence within their power, including his vote, to work for temperance and virtue. While we are in no wise to become involved in political questions, yet it is our privilege to take our stand decidedly on all questions relating to temperance reform. There is a cause for the moral paralysis upon society. Our laws sustain an evil which is sapping their very foundations. Many deplore the wrongs which they know exist, but consider themselves free from all responsibility in the matter. I can't help it. I'm free from all responsibility. This cannot be. Every individual exerts an influence in society. In our favored land, she's talking about America, every voter has some voice in determining what law shall control the nation. Should not that influence and that vote be cast on the side of temperance and virtue? Review and Herald, October 15, 1914. Well, those are very powerful words, and they're irrefutable. If we want to uplift the values of society, we must vote as a Christian. And in this 2024 election, there is no bigger moral issue than the issue of sacrificing children to Moloch. Either you're going to vote for someone who wants to sacrifice more children, or vote for someone who doesn't want to sacrifice more children. I understand that there are some good points and bad points in each candidate's positions on other issues, but this issue is very cut, very clear, and let's don't be found guilty of voting for what God calls an abomination, because if we do, we are guilty of the lives of thousands and millions of the least of these, my brethren. Yes, Ayesha, one candidate is much better than the other. Yes, it's just true. My point is, you're isolating the issue of abortion as that is the only issue. Yes, Alicia, that's true. It's the only issue that has the number one position of importance in this election cycle. There's no other issue anywhere near as important as abortion in this election cycle. The second, maybe most important moral issue in this election cycle would be, I would guess, the gender confusion. Because that, again, is an abomination. Same-sex marriage, that's all abomination. So yes, these are three things that are all abominations. And one candidate is for all these three, and the other candidate is down pretty strong on one and pretty strong on the other, and not so much on the other one. But yes, it's very clear who is more likely to uplift the morals of society. Yes, Ayesha, Israel has nothing to do with the conversation at hand. It's not a moral issue. Okay, this has been going on over an hour. I appreciate your interaction here, and I hope that we all come into unity of the faith and get out there and vote to help save the babies. It's the least of these, my brother. Jesus Christ was in the birth canal once, and you were, and I was too. So let's vote for Jesus. Father in heaven, please, may we follow your words. May we support the least of these, my brethren. And Lord, may you protect the country. May you protect your church. May we do the right thing. And please, Lord, help the babies, the most defenseless ones made in your image. And it seems like almost no one cares much about them, Lord. I don't know why. Please, Lord, forgive our insensitivity. If we don't, it seems like if we don't hear a scream, we don't care. Lord, please forgive us of our selfishness. That's what it is. It's selfishness. Please forgive us of our selfishness. And may your will be done in this election. In Jesus' name, amen.